All right, so have you ever thought about what it would be like to play D&D in a world that's actually flat? Like not just a flat map, but a flat planet. It's a pretty crazy idea, right?
Yeah, it's definitely like a mind-bending concept.
Well, it turns out there's actually a ton of stuff to think about with this, and we're going to dive into it today. We've got this super interesting article from LitRPG Reads all about using a flat Earth as a D&D setting. And I have to say, even just thinking about it gets my head spinning. Speaking of mind-bending settings, I had this wild experience in a game just the other night. We were exploring this ancient ruin, and the deeper we went, the weirder things got. Gravity started to shift, and the architecture, it was non-Euclidean, almost like being inside one of those M.C. Escher paintings,
Whoa, that sounds intense.
Yeah, it was.
I can totally see how that would get you thinking about flat Earth settings. It really makes you question all those assumptions we have about how reality works.
Yeah, totally.
So this article from LitRPG reads, what I found really fascinating is that it doesn't just present the idea of a flat Earth. It really goes deep into all the implications for D&D.
Yeah, exactly.
For example, think about gravity. In a world that's a sphere, gravity pulls everything towards the center right. But on a flat plane, it could be totally different. Maybe it pulls down uniformly, or maybe there are variations depending on where you are.
Yeah, and that could lead to some really cool gameplay mechanics. You could have areas where characters are heavier or lighter, or even places where gravity's reversed.
Exactly, and imagine what that would do to navigation. Compasses wouldn't work because the magnetic poles would be totally different, so players would have to rely on the stars and the sun to figure out where they're going.
Which in a flat world would be completely unique. The article mentions this idea of a sun that moves in a straight line. It rises on one side of the world and sets on the other. Can you even picture that?
Yeah, it's kind of a wild thought. And think about the moon. It wouldn't necessarily orbit the way we're used to. There might be multiple moons with different cycles, or the phases could be totally unpredictable.
So instead of just checking a calendar, players would have to really pay attention to the sky to know what time it is.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just about practicality, though. These celestial mechanics would have a huge impact on society, religion, and even magic systems.
Okay, now I'm really hooked. Tell me more about how this would affect society and religion.
Well, imagine a world where day and night are totally different. Cultures would have completely new ways of measuring time, and their beliefs about the universe would be based on these unique celestial events.
Right. Forget zodiac signs. We'd be talking about entirely new constellations and astrological systems.
Exactly. And when it comes to religion, just imagine the impact. Existing religions might have to change their doctrines to fit with this new understanding of the world. You might even see new cults or religions popping up based around the edges of the world or the movements of the celestial bodies.
Okay, so we've got societies running on different timescales and religions that have been totally changed by the shape of the world. What about magic? How would that be affected?
That's where things get really interesting. If the laws of physics are different in a flat world, it stands to reason that magic would be different too.
So spells that mess with gravity or the elements could act in totally unexpected ways. That would open up a whole new world of possibilities for spellcasters.
Absolutely. And think about planar travel. If the world is flat, what happens when you reach the edge? Does it just stop, or is there something beyond?
The article talks about some pretty wild ideas about what might be beyond the edge, like a realm of pure chaos or cities that act as gateways to other dimensions. There are even rumors of civilizations that exist outside of the known world.
Yeah, so spells that deal with planar travel or extra-dimensional stuff would become super valuable and dangerous.
It's like the edges of the world aren't just physical boundaries anymore. They're gateways to the unknown.
Exactly, and that's what makes this concept so cool for D&D. It takes this familiar idea of a flat Earth and then explores all the possibilities in a way that's really creative and makes you think.
Okay, I think I need to take a breath for a second. We've covered a lot, and I'm ready to hear more about the specifics, but let's pause here and come back to explore even more of the awesome possibilities of a flat Earth D&D setting.
Sounds good to me. We've only scratched the surface of this idea, so we're back, and I'm still processing all those possibilities we were just talking about. It's amazing how just changing your perspective, thinking about a flat Earth, can lead to so many creative ideas.
Yeah, seriously. And we've only just started to explore those ideas. You were saying something earlier about the edges of the world being more than just a physical boundary. Let's dig into that a little bit. What kind of stuff might players run into at the edge of a flat world?
Well, the article gives some pretty cool examples. Imagine running into these beings called horizon keepers. They guard the edge of the world. And they might challenge travelers with riddles or tests before letting them pass.
Oh, that's a cool idea. It makes the edge more than just a wall. There's some mystery and danger to it.
Right. And then there are these people called edge nomads. They've adapted to living on the fringes of the world. They might know a lot about how to navigate the edge. Or they might even have trade routes to places beyond it.
So instead of just falling off the edge, players could actually interact with these unique cultures. It really adds a whole other layer to the setting.
For sure. And then there's the potential for conflict. Whoever controls the edges of a flat world would have a lot of power. Countries might fight over access to resources or important locations, or religious groups might claim the edge as sacred ground.
It's like the whole geopolitical landscape gets flipped on its head. Countries that used to be landlocked now have a coast, and the balance of power could shift dramatically.
Exactly. And we haven't even talked about the economic impact yet. Think about the trade routes that could pop up, or the resources you might find at the edge. There's so much potential for adventure.
Speaking of resources, I'm curious about how a flat Earth would affect things like kingdoms and economies. Would the old power structures still be in charge, or would new factions rise up?
That's a great question. The article suggests that revealing a flat Earth would probably lead to a lot of chaos and instability. Kingdoms might break apart as different regions fight for control of the edges, and new alliances could form based on who's closest to those valuable areas.
And what about groups like guilds and churches? Would they try to adapt, or would they stick to their old ways?
That's where the role-playing gets really interesting. Think about the conflicts that might happen within those organizations. Some members might be excited about the New World Order, while others might resist change. It could lead to power struggles and even breakups.
So basically, every part of society would be in a state of flux. It would be a really dynamic and unpredictable world for players to explore. I'm starting to see why you're so into this concept.
It's a real game changer. And we haven't even talked about the impact on individual characters. Like, imagine a cleric who's super devoted to a god of mountains. How would they react to finding out that the world is completely different than they thought? Or how would an experienced explorer adapt to navigating a world without any familiar landmarks?
Those are some really interesting questions. It's not just about how the world changes, it's about how those changes affect the people in it.
Exactly. And that's what makes this concept perfect for D&D. It's a game that's all about creativity, imagination, and being able to handle the unexpected.
Speaking of adapting, the article mentions some custom mechanics that DMs could use to reflect the unique physics of a flat world. Can you give us a couple examples?
Sure. One cool idea is the concept of planar crossings at certain points along the edge. Like, imagine these spots where the fabric of reality is weak and you can pass through to other dimensions or planes of existence.
Oh, wow, that's really cool. It's like walking through a portal to another world.
Exactly. And then there's this idea of celestial winds. They're super powerful currents of air that flow along the edge of the world and connect different places. These winds could act like highways, allowing for fast travel across huge distances.
So instead of using ships or mounts, players could ride these winds across the sky.
Right. And those are just a couple of ideas. The possibilities are endless, really. It just depends on the DM's imagination and how willing the players are to embrace something new.
Okay, you've convinced me. This concept is amazing. But I think it's time to move on to the last part of our deep dive. We've talked a lot about the world itself, but there's one more important piece we haven't discussed: the players.
Ah, yes. That's where things get real, because even the best setting is only as good as the stories that happen in it. And that's where the players come in.
Okay, so we've talked about all the crazy implications of having a flat Earth in D&D, like the different physics and the unique societies and religions and the possibilities for magic and travel. But what about the players? How do we think they would react to finding out the world is flat?
Well, that's when things really start to get fun. Imagine you've been playing in this world for months, maybe even years. You've got all these assumptions about how things work, and then suddenly, bam, everything you thought you knew is wrong. It could be a total shock.
Right. It's like that moment in The Truman Show when Jim Carrey reaches the edge of his world. Everything changes in an instant.
Exactly. Some players might be super excited by the challenge. They'll want to explore this new reality and figure out all its secrets, but other players might resist it. They might have a hard time letting go of their old beliefs and adapting to the new situation.
Yeah, I can see some characters having a full-blown existential crisis.
Yeah.
Imagine a dwarf cleric who's devoted their life to a god of mountains. How would they deal with finding out that mountains don't even make sense in a flat world?
Totally. And those kinds of internal conflicts can make for some really great role-playing moments. Like, how does a lawful good paladin stick to their oath when the edges of reality are literally falling apart? Or does a rogue see this as a chance to take advantage of the chaos?
Those are great points. It's not just about how the world changes, it's about how those changes affect the characters personally.
Right. And that can have a big impact on the whole party dynamic, too. Imagine a group where some players believe in the flat earth and others don't. There's so much potential for tension and conflict there.
Oh yeah, I can see it now. Arguments over maps, accusations of heresy, maybe even a mutiny.
Exactly. It would make for some really memorable game sessions.
So from a dungeon master's perspective, how do you think you would handle revealing the flat earth to your players?
Well, the article suggests that it shouldn't be a sudden thing. You don't want to just dump all this information on them at once. It should be more of a slow burn, like dropping little hints and clues along the way.
Oh, that's a cool idea. It would create a lot of suspense and let the players piece things together themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe their compasses start acting weird in certain areas, or they notice that the stars aren't moving the way they should, or they meet travelers who tell stories about strange things happening at the edge of the world.
That's a great way to do it. It's like planting seeds of doubt that slowly grow into a realization.
Right. And then when the truth finally comes out, it's not just information, it's a major turning point in the campaign.
Yeah, it's a complete shift in their understanding of the world.
Exactly. And that's where the real adventure begins. Because now they're not just exploring a world, they're exploring the nature of reality itself.
Wow. I'm seriously impressed. We started with a simple question: what if the world was flat? And now we've gone on this incredible journey through all these different ideas.
Yeah. It's amazing what you can discover when you start asking those kinds of questions.
And a big thanks to LitRPG Reads and Paul Bello for this fantastic article. You can find it on their website, litrpgreads.com.
Definitely check it out if you're looking for ways to spice up your D&D games.
And to all our listeners, we want to hear from you. What do you think lies beyond the edge of a flat world? Share your theories, your campaign ideas, your wildest imaginations in the comments below. We can't wait to see what you come up with.
And until next time, happy gaming!